This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. Like the gentleman said, I am Steve Gould. Thank you for joining us, everybody. It's going to be a great episode. Right up top, I want to tell you this episode is sponsored by Avid Company. Avid is a company with a unique take on firearm holsters. If you've got different caliber firearms you like to carry, or you don't like adjusting your holster and firearm every time you get in and out of your vehicle, you need to check out their modular holster system, the Clip Lock. Clip Lock is comprised of a base that attaches anywhere you normally carry and holsters that snap on and off of the base using Avid's patented design. It's never been easier to transition from subcompact to full-size weapon regardless of caliber, make, or model. The system also works with Avid's lockbox, allowing you to store your firearm comfortably, securely, and accessibly while you drive, which is awesome because a lot of times driving with a firearm is uncomfortable. The fact that you can take it off and secure it and then click it back on is phenomenal to me. Avid proudly supports service members, veterans, and law enforcement officers, donating a portion of their profits to organizations like the FOP. And their modular holster system is made in America using only the highest quality materials. I love that. Made in America, guys. We got to support companies like this. Pre-orders are available right now in time for the holiday season. Learn more by visiting avidcompany.com. That's AVID company.com. And remember, supporting our sponsors supports Things Police See. Everybody, go check them out, please. So, without further ado, before we get to the further ado part, thank you for all the 5-star reviews, guys. We're getting closer and closer to 1,000, which is where the big boys are at, which is where I want to be. 1,000 reviews would be. I'll stop when we get to 1,000. I will stop asking so much, but 1,000 5-star reviews is the best, and I appreciate them. They come in like weekly. There's like 4 or 5 coming in a week, which is phenomenal. So thank you for that. Thank you for the Patreon sponsors. I thank the sergeants at the end with roll call, and yeah, this episode we have a returning guest, friend of the show. He went U.S. Marshals, ATF to Customs, Homeland Security. Last time he was on, he told crazy undercover stories about, it was episode number 120. Talked about buying from a white supremacist cop undercover. He talked about working on the set of Miami Vice, pranking Colin Farrell. He ran a whole fake warehouse and also a murder for hire to murder an entire family. That was episode 120. The episode is done phenomenal. It's got a ton of downloads. Had to have him back. Specifically, I want to talk about the undercover cases that he did and more importantly, working overseas. What's that like? So without further ado, let me bring on Lorenzo Toledo. Lorenzo!
Hey, how are you, Steve?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for coming back, man.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
How are you doing with holiday shopping? I want to know.
Oh, I'm doing it all online.
Dude, isn't it
I'm
great?
avoiding all the shops, all the stores.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I'm in Miami, so the traffic here is insane.
Yeah.
So I just save myself the headaches and I think as you get older, you just don't want to go through that anymore.
It is. I mean, I've done that like the last 5 years, and part of me always feels bad because Amazon's such a beast. But it's like, I know. Even if I just go to one mom and pop store and get like one gift, I feel like I'm doing my part, But
right.
The problem with us is we have my wife and I have a joint Amazon. Like we both use the same Amazon.
Yeah.
So it's like I have to tell her not to look. Don't look at the list, but then she'll be like, "Well, I want to use it for you." And then, recently, I've been working a lot of overtime, a lot of road jobs. That's kind of how you make it by in Massachusetts as a cop. And I wanted to buy her like a really nice pair of winter boots because she didn't have any. The ones she had were kind of crappy. And she's not the kind of woman that goes shopping. Like I don't have to be like, oh, don't go there. She never buys stuff. So I bought her like a nice pair of Sorel winter boots, with the furry, the nice ones. And so we're sitting on the couch and I'm like, did you look at the Amazon account? She's like, I did. I'm like, damn it.
Oh, she knew.
Yeah.
She knew, yeah.
Yeah. So it was.
I usually use my daughter's or something. Like she has her own account. So I'm going to get something for my wife. I'll use my daughter's account so she can't see it.
That's a good
Our
idea.
biggest problem is that we buy so much stuff on Amazon that every time there's a box that comes in, I don't know if it's hers or mine.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it terrible? I come home from work, there's these boxes. I'm like, what is this?
Right.
Oh, that's funny, man. Dude, so your episode has been really popular. I think the undercover world to the general public and just to beat cops like me is fascinating because it's totally different. It's a totally different aspect of law enforcement that you might never see. Like, I'll probably be a guy that I'll probably stay in uniform my whole career. I probably won't do it. I won't have the opportunity really where I work. So, and I know guys that do get on task force and stuff, and they are like, they grow a beard like this. They grow their hair long. Right. They never wear a uniform, and then once in a while they got to try to squeeze into their uniform or make sure it still fits. For a funeral or whatever. But they typically don't want to go back unless they really want rank. If you in the like local and state systems, if you want to like make usually if you want to make sergeant, lieutenant mostly, you got to go back. And it's like, it's super hard to give that up because it's, like I said, it's you could deal with a guy that's been on task force for 15 years that comes back that's like, I have not filled out a citation for 15 years. Like, this is not important to me.
Right. Yeah, we had task force officers in the groups I ran that were there for like 20 years. They were there longer than I was, and they didn't want to go back. And I remember that one guy was asked to go back, and he retired. He says, "I'm not going back to uniform anymore.
Yeah,
I'm done." So he just retired from the job.
Yeah, I mean, especially task force guys. I don't know if people know this, but you kind of get the leash is long. Like you're kind of making your own hours. You're
right.
You see them show up to like the mandatory trainings that we have, and they're like, they're almost like checked out. They're just like, dude, I don't even want to be here. I'm here because I have to be.
Right. Yeah.
So
you're 100% right. I mean, they have a good job though. It's fun for them, They have it good, and there's a lot of freedom, Steve. When you're in the task force, there's just a lot of freedom. They're going to get a nice car, an undercover car or a surveillance car. So there's a lot of perks with it that comes with the job, So, but you're giving up your career because you're never, like you said, you're not going to get promoted in your department, So you have to sacrifice. It depends, I guess, on what you want from your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're a federal agent and you go in, like, are you expected to at least try being undercover, or is there other kind of? I mean, I know there's like you guys have like SWAT teams and stuff, but if you're not undercover, you still work cases, but you're just not doing the buys, and you're not experiencing that lifestyle, right?
Absolutely. Like I was, there's a couple of undercover agents that all they do is undercover work, and they never get promoted. Their career goes nowhere because of that. I was an agent that did cases. I actually ran cases even when I wasn't doing the undercover. So I would do all the cases. Some of the cases I was the undercover and the case agent, which is I guess it's not the smartest thing in the world to do. But it's just that when you do all this undercover, you're so personally involved in the case, and you want to be able to get the max out of it, So that was something I did a couple times. But I'll be honest with you, for me doing surveillance, it was horrible because I always wanted to be the undercover in there, and when I wasn't in there, I felt so nervous for the guy in there. Like it was harder for me. It was harder for me because I know the mindset, and I was just so concerned that something would happen.
Yeah.
And so that happens. That happens a lot. And what you mentioned earlier, Steve, is really interesting. It's something that I considered when I first started. Cops in general, military cops, they all have a mannerism. They have these mannerisms that they have, the way they stand, the way they look at people, the way they walk. Those guys, it's very hard for them to transition to undercover because they still have it.
Yeah.
They still have that command presence. So what I did was, with Bergen County, I was on a SWAT team, but I tried to stay away from that as far as tactics because I didn't want those habits to come to me. So I had to be the opposite of all that, and that's something that another thing is you'll see these guys are all tatted up. They have all these tattoos, which look really cool, and I guess for some people it makes you look like you're a real bad guy. The problem is that if you end up running into somebody in an undercover again, they might say, "Hey, man, are you dealing with this guy? And he has a warehouse here, or he's got a tattoo of a clown on his left hand." You're marked. You know, that
Yeah.
can get you killed. So I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to get a tattoo for that reason.
Yeah, plain Jane. Just be a blank
Yeah,
slate.
man. Just, be invisible. The gray ghost is the best way to be, the gray ghost. And I learned a lot. I mean, in the beginning, I thought I had to be this badass guy. I had to be this tough guy that people would be afraid of. And what I learned was that after I did a deal with some guy, and the guy didn't want to meet me again because he thought he was going to get ripped off. And this was when I was the ATF. And I decided, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to come off as the guy that, is doing deals, making money. It's just all about business. Nothing that I was going to kill the guy who was going to kill me, because that escalates the level of tension. When
You got to kind of soften up, right? You got to be more like just a normal
you gotta
guy.
Just bring it down. You got to try to bring it down a notch. Everybody's calm, and you have to feel the same suspicions that you would normally have if you were doing it. So what I would do is a lot of times I would say, hey man, don't bring anybody here. I don't want to meet anybody. I'm only going to deal with you. Things that a cop wouldn't say.
Right.
And I remember my boss telling me, what do you mean? Why did you tell the guy that? And I said, because I'm trying to convince him. I have to lure him in and have him trust me first. And when you do that, and the bad guy sees that you're as cautious as he is, they'll just trust you more. They figure, okay, this guy's not. He never would have told me to do that. If he was a cop, he would want me to bring somebody else in, and
Right.
it's hard when you start asking questions like, "Hey, where did you get the dope? It's really good." You're done. That's it. Nobody's gonna want to give you their source.
Yeah, you got to ask them if they're a cop before they ask you.
Exactly, and you got to play it off. I mean, sometimes the guy comes in calm. You just go with the flow. But if you see that there's a little hesitation, you also hesitate a little bit.
Yeah.
And just play the game. It's a game. At the end of the day, undercover work is a mental game, and it's absolutely not for everyone. But I mean, there's some undercovers that I would say, like a guy like Donnie Brasco, who's well known, for doing that huge undercover case.
Sure.
With the FBI, there's things he did I can never do.
He went deep.
He went super deep. But what I'm saying is he's Italian. You had to be from that world to get in, right? No matter, I could be the best undercover in the world, and I could never do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just, I guess you have to match the situation with the undercover to make it work.
Right. Yeah, because you did kind of live that life with the warehouse, right? You were like full on running a business.
Yeah, we had a full import-export business with containers.
Crazy.
Yeah, that we would send overseas to South America, and they'd load up these containers with snow peas and everything else, and we had this top false section, and we'd get it at the warehouse, separate the dope from the produce, and then they'd come and pay me my money, and then we take them down right there.
How's that work when you're shipping a container like that? Mm-hmm. What are is everybody's got to be in the know, right? Do they have drug sniffing dogs that kind of ignore that, or how does that make it to you?
What we do is we coordinate. When I had the warehouse, we were U.S. Customs. This is before 9/11, right? So we had coordination with U.S. Customs. That was our sister agency. So we would coordinate the transfer of that container from point A to point B.
Make sure it gets there.
It gets there, but again, at the other location, you can't really say anything because they're so corrupt. So you kind of just let it happen. Yeah. The cops, I hate to say this, but a lot of those cops, foreign, man, they're paid off, or they're doing other things, and so you can't tell anybody like that what's going on. So, but the danger for me, Steve, was okay. So we got 100 kilos, 200 kilos, whatever it was. We handed it to the guy. First thing I start getting is phone calls from the guys in Colombia. Say, hey man, I haven't heard from Jaime, for example. I haven't heard from Jaime, for example, and where is he? I'm like, I don't know where he is. He didn't show up. What do you mean he didn't show up? He didn't show up, man. What do you want me to tell you, Right. So we buy some time with that, and a lot of times what they do is they send somebody else. And I did it. The most I ever had people come was 3 times. But you can imagine, Steve, every time there's another person, it gets more and more dangerous because that warehouse is not moving locations. Right. That location is the location. So anytime I went in there or anytime I left, I could have been shot.
Dude, I can't imagine, because these guys, one thing they definitely have is money. And people will kill people for money. Absolutely. So absolutely. You had to be thinking, like, if this guy loses his mind, pissed off, and the gig is up, what's stopping him from dropping $250,000 to kill you?
Absolutely. And now it's, honestly, now it's even more dangerous with social media, how the way the internet has exploded. It's going to be tough for people to do undercover work right now. Really tough.
Yeah.
They have to get the full support of their department, get fully backstopped with IDs and maybe create a fake social media page.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, if they have enough money, they're going to find out who you are. There's just ways to do that, right? So we all know that. But
yeah.
So it's a lot more dangerous than when I was doing it. But
my buddy
it only takes one bullet, man. One bullet.
I know.
That's it takes, at any given time. And it's over.
I'd be sweating every day, dude.
Yeah.
I could not do it. My buddy my buddy was overseas in the Navy, then he was EOD and he worked with SEALs. Mm-hmm. And I noticed when he came back, he never had social media, ever.
Right.
And come to find out, we kind of loosely kept in touch. He's a special agent for the State Department now. So I don't even know what these guys really do, but the State Department is deep government. So I think he's in South America somewhere now. Right. But I think now he finally has like a LinkedIn where you can kind of see what he does. So he must have a very official position, like where it's okay for him, but he does not have any of the other stuff, like you're saying.
Right.
How could he? I remember when he was on a Navy ship. This is like kind of embarrassing now because I am a Christian guy, but wasn't then. But he was on a Navy ship and we would email sometimes and he'd be like, man, we got nothing out here. Can you send me some like sexy pictures or something from the internet? So I sent him like straight up like pornography. And he was like, whoa, no, not pornography, because he got gigged. Like oh man, or he said no, that wasn't good. Like they saw the porn come in. I was like, dude, I don't know. Man. I'm not gonna send Sports Illustrated. I thought you wanted the real deal.
Right. That's funny, Steve.
Yeah, so he's on
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying he's on a boat with a big firewall, probably protecting all the information.
Yes. It's funny when you mentioned that about the military guys. I was a gang supervisor in Miami for the Violent Gang Task Force for 5 years. And one time, I don't know if I said it last time, we had a Navy SEAL come with us.
No.
This guy's a member. Yeah, he's a member of SEAL Team 6, legit, confirmed.
Wow.
Nicest guy in the world. You'd never know he was a Navy SEAL. He went out with us on some of the arrests that we did. And I just told him, listen, man, you can come with us. You can't get out of the car. and you know what I mean? And you just don't do anything. Please, because
don't slit any throats.
Right. I did this on the QT. I didn't ask permission. I just did it, because he was a friend of the SEALs would train with our SWAT team guys.
Okay.
So I did it as a favor because he was helping the SWAT guys. So he comes along with us. And at the end of the day, at the end of the briefing that we had, a post briefing, I asked him, what did you think? So what did you think? He said, I don't know how you guys do it. I go, what do you mean? He says, how do you guys go in to these buildings without knowing who's in there?
He wants the intel.
He says, we don't do that.
Yeah.
If we had to go in, we're gonna, they're gonna toss grenades in there, and they have the green light to kill people.
Yeah.
Well, we don't.
Different engagement rules.
Oh my God! You kill somebody now, and your career is pretty much over.
Yeah.
It's gonna be scrutinized, and it's incredible. All the Monday morning quarterbacks come out, and the last thing you want, and I know Steve, you're a Christian, the last thing you want is to kill somebody.
Yeah, of course.
That's the last thing in the world you want. None of us really get in the job to want that. We want to help people, we want to do the right thing. But so yeah, it was funny the way he said it. That he said, "Yeah, I don't think I can do your job." Yeah. And I said, "Well, I know I can't do your job." I told him, I wouldn't make it day 2 of Hell Week if I made it past day 1. So I can't do it,
Dude, I used to have to do when I was an insurance investigator. I would sometimes have to drive to San Diego, and that's where the SEALs train. Yeah. You kind of drive along the beach. You would see these guys just getting thrown out of helicopters with no parachute. They're just falling falling into the sea. You're like, holy cow! They're out there on the beach with the logs and dude,
those guys are the real deal. I have so much. Obviously, I have so much admiration for the military. My son. Right now, he's in the Air Force in Okinawa.
Oh, awesome!
He's over there for a 3-year tour. So I've always supported law enforcement and military. I'm a big supporter, as most of us are.
Absolutely.
As well, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. The we used to get you were talking about like going in not knowing what's going on. Where I used to work, we used to get it was like a national law enforcement magazine, and it would always have like the fallen law enforcement officers.
Right.
For each month. And man, it was always special agents. You never hear about this stuff. Like a lot of DEA guys getting shot, like constantly. Yeah. I remember I just read one. I think I've said this before, but I was reading one of the magazines, and the next day the DEA came down to where I was working, and they had this guy who was in our town who sold some bad heroin, and some people died. Mm-hmm. So they were going to get him, and I remember we met up at this movie theater parking lot that was near the address, and one of the DEA guys was like, "Oh, damn, I forgot my vest at the office." And the office is like 45 minutes away. He's like, screw it. He just does it anyways. I'm like, dude, I just read the magazine. Don't go in.
Yeah.
Dude,
but you know what I think? It's the peer, man. That peer pressure. Do we actually had a guy in customs? This is hard to believe. I wasn't there, and I wouldn't have let it happen if I was there. But this guy actually forgot his gun.
Ooh.
And he was like the fifth man through the door. And he didn't want to tell anybody.
It's like this.
That's exactly what he did, Steve.
Oh, no.
That's exactly what he did.
He made a gun with his hand.
He made a gun out of his finger, man.
Yeah, you're right, though, because everybody else is ready to go. You don't want to be the guy to go, hold on.
I'll forget it.
So
he didn't want to say anything, which is, when we think about it, stupid, because he could have, not only could have got himself killed, he could have got his team hurt or killed, so.
Right.
But it was that pride, that sometimes that pride, man, it's tough, Steve. And I'll tell you what, like, I did a lot undercover for ATF and for Customs and Homeland, but I think the most dangerous undercover work I did, honestly, was in ATF.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with street level criminals. You're not dealing with the high echelon of the cocaine world. You're dealing with these guys that will kill you for $1.
Nothing to lose.
And they have nothing to lose. They have absolutely nothing to lose. You're buying guns and drugs. And, so everybody you meet with has a gun.
Yeah.
You're buying guns, the guy's got guns, Right. So everybody's coming. The good thing about that is they know I'm armed too.
Right.
But the problem is, like, as we all know, is that action is quicker than reaction. So
right.
It's tough, man. It's tough. Like, I know friends of mine that have done undercover and they put themselves in situations where they lose control. And what I mean by that is they jump in somebody else's car and then the surveillance team will lose them. Now they just gave up all the control they had and gave it to the bad guy.
Yeah.
And that's something that I did it once. I did it one time because I had a guy that was a federal firearms dealer, and he was also a fireman in Plainfield, New Jersey. And he was selling drugs. He was selling guns. He was taking the serial numbers and defacing the guns.
Ooh, that's bad.
And it was a good case. I had bought like 12 guns from the guy, and he was selling them to all these drug dealers. So it was a good case. And the guy, I'm in my car. I'm driving, but the guy says, "Hey, man, let's go around the corner." And my boss, I don't know if I mentioned it last time, Steve, my boss was Dominic Polifrone. Dominic Polifrone was the guy that did the undercover on the Iceman Kuklinski case.
Was he the one where his partner was shot?
No, that's Alex Diatri.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's Alex. I don't know if you heard of the Iceman, but if you haven't, try to watch the movie, or you can look it up on YouTube. He was a prolific killer for the mob contractor. He wasn't in the mob, but they would hire him to kill people.
Okay.
So the guy was really bad, and so my boss told me, he says, "Hey, whatever you do, don't leave the set. You stay right there." And that day, I was young. I wanted to impress everybody. I was starting out in my career. The guy told me to go around the corner, and I did. I went around the corner, right? So and one of the agents there, the deal went great. Nothing bad happened. It was awesome. I was so excited to, like, "Hey, man, look, I made the case. This is great, And one of the guys tells me, "Dude, when you get back, get ready." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Dominic's going to eat you alive." He was yelling. He was cursing out about you. And I'm like, oh, my God. So I'm all excited that I did this case, but now I'm worried that he's going to go off on me and mess up and everything. So I remember when I got into his office, he just looked at me. He was ready to explode, Steve. Like, I could see
tell.
him. He was a Italian guy, strong guy, He was about to go off on me. And I just said, "Hey, Dom, before you say anything, I want you to know that I know I messed up and I'm really sorry." That's what I said. I said, "I'm really sorry, man." Yeah. So he stopped his breath. He goes, "Close the door." And then we sat down. He goes to his bottom desk and he pulls out a bottle of whiskey. And we just we had some cigars. We smoked. We drank a little bit. And he was just telling me. He was giving me like a father tells a son,
Yeah.
Don't ever do that again, man. You can't do that because the minute you do that, you're giving that person the opportunity to rip you
Yeah.
off or kill you. So, and I never did that again.
Yeah.
And that's something, Steve. When you talk about undercover overseas, that's something that I never did as well. Like what we would do is we would meet our CI. Let's say in Colombia, if I had an undercover deal that I was negotiating for, whether it was money laundering that we were doing pickups of money for these narcotics traffickers and drug traffickers, or we were doing the pickups for money, for drug traffickers as well. Whatever, it was either drugs or money. We would always meet at a separate hotel where we weren't staying across the city, across town somewhere,
Right.
and we would meet in the lobby, for example, of that hotel. And then if the guy wanted us to go somewhere, I wouldn't go. I would say, look, man, I don't know you. I'm not jumping in the car with you. I don't know what you. No, you want to meet? We meet here, and and my position was always, if the guy insists on taking me somewhere, then I don't want to do the deal.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. It's just
Alex
not worth
did
it,
that in his interview.
Alex did that.
Oh,
Alex
and he
did
was
that.
like,
Yeah,
he had me
God.
like sweating, telling me about it. I was like, dude, are you crazy?
Alex did that, man, and I can tell you that I didn't want to do that because like you mentioned earlier, I worked also for Alex Diatri, and his partner was killed doing it undercover. So those are the lessons that I came in with.
Yeah.
Of how to do the undercover, but be careful, man, because forget about overseas. If you jump in a car with somebody here, you can get killed.
Yeah.
Alex is a phenomenal undercover. He's amazing, and he was able to make it work.
Well, he said it was a big mistake. Like
it was because it could have. The bottom line is, we all want to go home. We all want to go home. We want to see our families and be the dads that we can be and the grandfathers that we can be, and it's just not worth it for a case to put yourself that much in harm's way. Undercover work is dangerous as it is. Law enforcement is dangerous as it is. Why risk that, And I guarantee you, Alex will tell you the same thing, that if it happened today, he wouldn't do it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think he was in the same boat you were when you drove off the set.
Right.
He was kind of newer, and he was like, I gotta make this happen.
Right,
and he faced a similar thing where they were like, you're going to get it today.
Right.
They're not happy.
Yeah, they were upset. And this is the problem overseas, Steve, is that there's not the corruption, the level of corruption overseas is vastly increased as opposed to the United States. So when you go over there, you're working with our foreign counterparts, and then they have what's called vetted units, which are units that, they've trained, they've been polygraphed.
These guys aren't corrupt. These guys are okay.
Right. So, but they've been polygraphed, everything else, but those guys get paid off too. It just happens. In fact, so you're pretty much my point is you're putting your life in their hands.
Right.
Like I trust my guys, I trust my other agents. I don't trust these guys I don't know,
Yeah.
And I can tell you this, I was the Caribbean attaché, and I ran all the investigations in the Caribbean.
Oh, wow.
And we had a team I believe it was in Jamaica. It was either in Jamaica or the Cayman Islands that we had a vetted unit. I think it was Jamaica. They had a vetted unit there, and they had our polygraphists go out there to do questions on everybody there. Do you know that out of 10 people, I think 9 completely miserably failed the polygraph? And some of the questions they asked, were you ever involved in a murder? Did you ever,
Wow.
So, things that were like incredible.
Yeah.
So now we had to send the CBP plane to go get these polygraphists out of the country because they were worried that they were going to plant something in their suitcases on the way back.
So at this point, you already, all right, so from this lesson, we can learn that we don't need to do this again. We just can't pretty much trust these guys or foreign assets.
Right. I mean, you could work with foreign assets, and I worked with some great foreign assets, but you can't put yourself in that position where if there's just one corrupt person, you're done. And that's the problem, and I think looking back at some of the things I did and the risks that I took, I don't think I would do it anymore because I'm older, I'm wiser, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah,
I went into buildings too, Steve. I went in Newark, New Jersey. I don't know if you're familiar with Newark, New Jersey, but it's
not
a
nice.
real tough town. Yeah, it's not a nice place to go, And I was buying guns from these guys, and I was going into these buildings. My cover team couldn't even hear what was going on. And I did that maybe once or twice. The last time I did it, I heard somebody open the door from the building downstairs and just kind of waited. And I just had that hunch they were going to try to rip me off, So I just pulled my gun out and I told the guy, listen, man, I'm telling you right now, if you're trying to rob me, I'm going to shoot you. I'm killing you before something happens to me.
Damn.
And then I don't think I don't know. No, yeah, he knew I spoke Spanish. He yelled at the guys and he said, hey, it's all right. It's all right. And they left. So I was able to make the buy. I was buying a Tech 9, I think it was.
Wow.
I made the buy, but going down those stairs, that building staircase and going outside, I didn't know what was going to happen,
How do you
Like
how do you maintain
my gun, put it in my pocket, and just had it in my pocket. I wasn't gonna wait to draw or nothing.
Dude, with that amount of adrenaline in your system, once you confirm that, oh yeah, this is what's going on.
Right.
How do you complete a buy? I would have been like, jacked.
You know what? I wasn't. I was gonna leave. I didn't want to do the buy, but after the guy saw the way I handled that, I guess, he said, all right, and he just made the buy. If it wasn't for that, I would have left. I would have walked away and not done the buy, And Steve, another thing that I learned a lot. Like I said, I got to learn from Alex Diatri and Dominic Polifrone and a lot of really good undercovers. And I was on a deal for Alex Diatri in Long Island one time. We were supposed to meet up for some guy that we were going to trade guns for drugs, and it was supposed to be, I think, at 7:30 to meet.
Okay.
So I get there. We get there early. We're there about 7:15, 7:10, even earlier, maybe 7, and we're planning everything. So I get in my location. I'm waiting, and 7:30 passes. And I get a call from Alex. He's like, "Hey, let's go, wrap it up." I go, "Alex, no, wait. It's only 7:30. The guy said that he let's give him a couple minutes. Let's give him a half hour." He goes, "Nope, only cops wait. Let's go."
Really?
And I never forgot that, man. I never forgot that. He goes, "Only cops wait."
Yeah.
And that stayed ingrained in my mind and everything I ever did after that. And again, he was shot 5 times. His partner was killed. Doing Undercover.
Yeah.
So I'm going to listen to anybody. I'm listening to a guy like that, and all the horrors, all the nightmares that he has endured since that date that keep going is incredible.
Yeah.
I think regrets. Yeah, it's tough.
I think I take 5 bullets. I'm looking for a retirement. He got
hit with a .357 Magnum at close range.
Wow. That's like one of the number one man killers.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember. There's a show called Top Cops. You could probably still pull it up on YouTube, but they had an episode about what happened with them. And what happened with them was that Alex Diatri looked like a complete mobster. Like if you took his picture and you didn't know he was a cop, you would say, "Oh, he's probably a member of the Colombo family or the Gambino family or something like that." That's what he looked like. And he was doing real good undercover work in New York. But what happened was that he went to Miami during the Mario boat lift when all those Cubans came in. They were all criminals.
Yeah.
And those guys didn't care about you being organized crime or being a mafia. They didn't care about that. Those guys were stone cold killers. So the persona that he was able to be successful with in New York, he couldn't do that in Miami.
Didn't translate.
Didn't translate. And these guys weren't having it. So it ended up being a rip. They went inside of a motel, real, scuzzy motel, and which was a mistake.
With Tony Montana.
Exactly. That time, like with this group, there was like a Tony Montana, and they ripped him, and they ended up killing his partner, and they shot his partner in the head, and he was dead instantly. And then he was shot 5 times, and he was able to fire as well, and it was just a nightmare, a true nightmare, and it's a miracle that he's still alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
He did the rest of his career?
He finished his career.
Man, that guy's a hero, man.
Now, he is, man. I'll tell you what, if I can never get him to do your show, I will, because he's somebody that, what I loved about Alex is the way that after he survived that shooting, he went out and spoke to officers that were shot.
That's
all
great.
over the country. He came out there and he would tell them, "Hey, look, this is what you're going to experience. This is what happened to me. You're going to have these nightmares. It's going to pass, whatever." He gave them advice. And I respected that so much that he was able to relive that just to help others.
That's incredible, man. I mean, these stories are so fun to hear and interesting,
right.
But people who have not been in that position, or people who have even been dispatched to like a hot call, like
right.
This is all scary stuff. Like that's
right.
there's no bravery or courage without fear. Like
right.
Law enforcement officers are overcoming this all the time, and when it's all said and
right.
done, you can then tell the story. And it's entertaining and
right.
fantastic and like, wow. But
right.
for you guys doing it, I mean, it's terrifying. I mean, that's you.
It is.
The fact that you can even compose yourselves is like that you can become a different person. Like earlier when you said, or not a different person, but you can just be relaxed. Like when you said, like, you get the cops with the high and tight that just cannot do it. They're just, okay, you're just going to be a straight up uniform cop, which is great.
Right.
But,
yeah, absolutely. But like, there's a lot of danger in that as well,
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, but when I graduated police academy, my wife and I didn't have kids, and we'd go out drinking all the time and meet other, groups. And, you could just see, like, you walk in the bar and you'd be like, oh, honey, do you think it's the group of guys with khaki pants, tucked in polo shirts, and Nextels on their belt? Do you think those are the guys we're meeting? Because you're right. Because those are cops,
Right.
They have the high and tight.
Steve, and that's what happens, like, in Miami. You'll see a lot of guys, like, for example, DEA, that come into Miami. Most of them don't speak Spanish, unfortunately,
That's crazy.
And they all dress the same. They wear the cargo pants. They'll have like
5'11" cargo pants,
a clip-on knife.
Yeah,
like you can.
I wear one. Yeah,
right. You can literally spot them a mile away.
Yep.
And I remember I was doing a deal when I was with Customs where I believe it was heroin. I was buying I think it was 4 or 5 kilos of heroin or something like that. And I was at this huge mall that's called Bayside in Miami, and they had Secret Service with me because they had given me counterfeit money to make the buys.
And they enforce counterfeit money.
Right. I had to call the deal off because all those Secret Service guys at the time that were there, they were all dressed like you see them on television. Not with the suits, but with those jackets, those vests that people wear, the photographers.
Yeah. 1,000 pockets.
Right. And I was like, man, these guys are going to get me killed. They're going to get me killed. So, make a long story short, that deal didn't go that day, and we ended up doing it another time. But I told these guys, look, do me a favor, and I don't mean this out of any disrespect to you guys. Let my guys be the cover team in front because they know how I work already, and you guys can be in the periphery. But just let them be there because those are the guys I trust, and they know how I work and operate. So that was something I always wanted to do as well. Is to make sure you got the right guys that are covering you. That was really important.
Yeah, that's tough. Like I know guys that do like raids and stuff, and they on task forces, and they really are not. Even other undercover teams, like they really want their team. They're not really like you should really know your team members. I mean, of course, also they shouldn't look like that. That's like a red flag. But even working with other guys that you haven't worked with before, I've heard them tell me before, like, it just weren't comfortable. Like these guys weren't on our team. We know they're good, but they don't know us, and it just. You want to have as much confidence as possible in those situations. Right. Not 100%. The opposite. You don't want to feel like you don't know the person.
Right. And another thing, like in the groups I worked with, some where I was an agent, others where I was a supervisor, we wanted to do our own search warrants. Like we wanted to break the door down.
Right.
We didn't want SWAT to come in and break the door down. We were like, hey, wait a minute. No, we did this. This is ours.
Sure.
So we're not giving it up. We're doing it's just, I guess it's macho thing or whatever you want to call it, pride. But that happened a lot of times where sometimes the front office would make you use SWAT and say, nope, you got to use them. And sometimes it would be valid, that they would do it. But other times it was stuff that I guess SWAT had to have a certain number of raids that they did to get more funding. It's all the stuff that messes up the job at the end of the day.
Yeah.
All the politics. A lot of times it was that, So, but hey, I give all respect to like all law enforcement. Like I told you, man, the job is just, it's almost a thankless job. Now worse than ever.
Yeah.
You guys have it tough, man. I mean, all my respect to the law enforcement guys out there because, it's like they used to tell me, I had an NYPD guy that told me you should become a fireman. And I said, why?
Sounds like my dad.
He said, everybody loves a fireman.
Yep.
That's what he told me. I'll never forget that. He goes, everybody loves a fireman.
Yep.
Cops, you know what I mean? You're never going to be respected, loved, appreciated. And he said, just become a fireman.
Dude, I was at college and I took one criminal justice class. My dad was a cop for 32 years. I took one and I was like, I loved it. It was so good. So I called my dad. I called my dad and I'm like, it was taught by an ex-trooper or retired trooper. It was mostly war stories mixed in with like what he needed to teach. Right. And I was like, man, this is, I'm scratching the right itch. I like this. And I got on the phone with my dad, and my dad was like, granted at this point, he was like a lieutenant getting ready to retire.
Right.
He liked being a sergeant. That was his favorite. Lieutenant was like, he hated it. He hated the admin stuff. And he said, Steve, please, because believe it or not, I graduated with a computer degree. So
good for you, man.
He
good
said,
for you.
He said, just stick with a computer degree. You can always get into law enforcement, and computers will always be valuable to law enforcement. But if you just get a law enforcement degree, you can be a cop. And then beyond that, if you want to be an attorney, it's a whole bunch of more school. So why not just stick with a degree that's more universal? You can always be in law enforcement. And it was wise advice.
He was right on point.
Yeah.
That was a very wise man, your dad. I can tell you that. He was right on point. Steve, every job that I'm working for Pfizer, but they actually had a restructuring, so I'm going to be laid off, I think, December 19th.
Right.
So I'm going to be starting a new job. But I can tell you that when I started looking for positions, if you don't have a cyber background, it's almost impossible to get a job.
Yeah.
So they want people that know about cyber. That's systems, computer systems, networks, all that. You have to have that training if you want to get a high-paying job, in the private sector.
Right. It's in everything. It's even cops, like even on the beat, you're using a computer.
Absolutely.
The thing screws up with the server. It's not working right. Like a little bit of knowledge is very helpful.
Right. Absolutely, man. So that was very wise that your dad told you that,
So that's
awesome.
But then I never did anything with a computer degree. So it's like, if you need help rebooting Windows 3.1, I'm your man,
I can reach out to you. All right, man. Sounds good, But, Steve, I mean, look, it's good that we have places like here, this podcast, which is awesome that you put out there, that we have a chance to talk. And hopefully some people will listen to this and hopefully they'll get something that'll help them out down the road. The reason I got into law enforcement was an unfortunate series of events. I was living in New York. My family was pretty poor. We lived in a really urban area of New York City, an area called Washington Heights.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Yeah. And my brother, my stepbrother, we were all living together with my mom. Everything was fine. And one day, I remember I had a long hallway, and I hear this blood-curdling scream from my mother. I hear the scream, and I'm 10 years old,
right?
So I jump out of bed. I'm scared, and I look down the long hallway, and I see two police officers there.
Oh,
it's almost like a movie. It was almost like something you see in a movie because all I saw was the shadow of the cops behind her, that light hitting them.
Yeah.
So I couldn't see their faces. I just saw their hats and the uniforms, and all of a sudden, my mom collapsed. And I find out that my brother was murdered. And,
whoa. It's like a mom's worst nightmare, seeing two uniformed cops come to the door.
Yeah. My mom was never the same. Never the same until I had my first child. And then she was wearing black for, I forget how many years. I mean, but
God bless
it
her.
was tough for me. Yeah, it was tough for me because people knew who killed my brother. They were witnesses. But this guy was a killer. This guy had killed before. And nobody wanted to come forward.
Yeah, good reason to fear him, probably.
Yeah, he was bad. He was a really bad person. So nobody wanted to give the guy up. So I always said, you know what? I don't want that to happen to any mother. I don't want another mother to have to go through what my mom did, and I don't want anybody else to have to see what I saw.
Yeah.
So that was my whole reasoning behind getting into law enforcement. That was my, from that point on, from 10 years old on, I knew I was going to be a cop. Whether it was a cop, a state trooper, a federal agent, whatever it was going to be, I was going to be one of those, and that's what I did. I set my sights on that, and I was lucky enough to afford that. I don't have any regrets. I think, listen, you go to a bar with a bunch of friends that are accountants, lawyers, they're not going to have the stories that we have. Right. They don't have the rich lives that we have.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade that for all the money in the world. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, I have friends who are in high finance or attorneys and stuff like that, and it's a rewarding careers monetarily, but they really look at law enforcement and they're like, but you are doing something that's needed and is purposeful. Like it's law enforcement itself is ancient. It's an old profession, and it's so needed to anybody with common sense. So that I think that's what made it so painful for guys like you and I and other law enforcement officers, where when this tidal wave, which has now swung the other way because they realized how retarded it was, but
absolutely,
when they were defunding these cities with all this crime, and they would even get interviews in the inner cities with people, and they would, when you talk to the residents there, they're like, we need more cops.
Right.
3 of my sons were killed in gangs. You think I want to see less cops? We want them in the neighborhood more. Don't listen to these people. Like this is all political posturing.
It is. It really is, and it's a shame because the innocent people, like always, are the ones that end up being the victims. So it's a shame that happened. And going back to the story about our lives being so colorful, after I did the Miami Vice movie, I don't know how I did it, but I ended up hooking up with that actor John Seymour Hoffman.
Yes, yeah, he passed away. Yeah,
he passed away. He
incredible actor,
right? Yeah, he was one of the best actors at the time. And I met him at a pub. I was with the actor from Miami Vice that played the bad guy. So we're at this pub in New York, and he comes in and he introduces me as a federal agent and all this stuff. And he tells me, "Hey man, let's go outside." So I'm excited. I'm like, man, I'm with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
It's crazy.
I was a fan. I was a fan.
Yeah,
I
of course.
That was awesome. We go out there, and he goes, "Man, tell me about your job. What do you guys do? I'm fascinated. Just tell me." And I'm like, dude, I'm fascinated by what you do. Can you tell me about your job? He's like, no. I don't want to talk about my stuff. I just want to talk about your stuff. And it turns out that his mom was a judge in Rochester, New York, or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
But it's funny how even him, with the life that guy had, that's unfortunate that he overdosed. I mean, he couldn't have been nicer to me. He was a really nice, respectful guy. That he wanted to know about what we do.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
And that's awesome, man. That's why I tell you. I mean, we're blessed, We are
Absolutely
blessed to have this job, And again, I don't know how guys do it. I don't know how you do it. It's hard, but we need good people like yourself to stay out there and do the job, for all our sakes.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I totally agree. Like we're trying to hire right now, and we're lucky that we have some good applicants, but it's really hard, and it's agencies don't know what to do. The pendulum's swinging the other way, and we're talking about like increasing pay and making it better, but you've already kind of soiled the well. It's like people it's kind of like the 70s when my dad became a cop. No one wanted to be a cop in the 70s, and my mom was pregnant. My dad was working at a lumber yard, and the chief of police in a town in Cape Cod had known my dad's dad, and he was like, he knew he was in the Navy, and he was like, "Hey, you ever thought about being a cop?" And my dad, he's like, "It's got benefits," and he was like, "Benefits? Okay." So I mean, he literally went in, he fired like a handful of rounds at a target, he hit most of them, and they're like, "You know what? Can you Monday you start? We'll put you on foot patrol in the center."
That's awesome.
And he's like, "Okay." So he started doing it, and after 3 years working there, I've said this before on the show, but after 3 years working, there was a law in Massachusetts. If your town went over a certain population, your officers actually had to go to police academy.
Oh, wow.
So after 3 years of midnights, they call him in. They go, "Tim, bad news. We disenrolled you in police academy." And he's like, "What? I'm already a cop. I've been doing this 3 years." They're like, there's a state law that you got to go. So he had to go to police academy after being on the job for a while. But, he was just a good local guy.
Right.
But they couldn't find anybody to do the job. Right. Like, because it was like leftover from the 60s. It kind of bled into the 70s.
Yeah,
where
it
was
sprinkled into the 70s. Yeah, you're right.
It wasn't cool. 100%. Like, it wasn't, no one, and then it was cool for a little bit, then it was bad again, then it was cool again, but it's never not been needed. Like, it's always been needed,
Right. Yeah, it's a necessary evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but what's funny, man? I had I think it might have been a professor in history or when I was in college, and he told me a story. He said, "Look, if you take all the clothes you're wearing and all your experiences and you put them in a 55-gallon drum, and after, I don't know what he said, 10 years or whatever, he said, turn the whole drum around upside down and start wearing the clothes that are on top, they'll be back in fashion." And what he was trying to say is, like, we're going through almost like a 60s, 70s era right now, where there's a lot of hate in the world.
Yeah.
I think the next wave, man, we might be blessed enough to see people going back to religion and the values that this country was built upon, and I'm hoping that actually happens and that we can save this country,
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, when you have no faith in God, it's unfortunately, it's a telltale sign of many major civilizations where they start screwing with gender. When you can't say a girl's a girl, a boy's a boy,
Right.
and they start this like lady boy melding.
Right.
Any society, Rome, all the great France,
Right.
every place that started doing that. I was listening to a historian talking on a podcast. He said any place that when they start that shit, it's unreversible. The empire that's doing it falls apart. So I was depressed hearing it. I'm like, oh my, because that's what's happening here. You know, it's insane where you can go into just like your primary care and all of a sudden they'll start talking to your kid about their pronouns and you're like, my kid is 6. Like, who's in charge here?
Yeah.
Like, and people just need to be emboldened to say, let me write an email or let me ask to talk with the head practitioner. Who owns this place?
Right.
Is this a new thing you're doing, or why are you doing this? Like, the kid is 5.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't like anything we want to.
Well, they're hurling that on them, you know, and it's the same thing, unfortunately, like Disney did with some of the movies they're doing now, where they're introducing that it's okay to kiss a boy or it's okay to, you know, and it's. I think a kid, you know, let a kid be a kid, you know, let him figure out his own life, you know, and figure out what he wants to do down the road. But I agree 100% with you. I think that has a lot with the fall of society right now and the way things are going in this country and the way we're perceived by other countries.
Oh yeah, it's like a joke.
We are the laughing stock of the world right now.
Yeah,
you know, and a guy like Putin would never put up with this kind of stuff. And you know, it's like the biggest threats that we have, right, with China and Russia. I mean, those guys, if we were ever going to be invaded or something was ever going to happen, this is like the perfect time because I don't see how these young kids could go into the military and fight anybody.
I know.
You know, it's scary. It is scary.
Yeah, and it's even in the culture. I see memes and like little videos of them that exact joke. Like, here's a 21-year-old now fighting the enemy, and here's somebody from like World War II, who like fights the enemy, comes home, starts a family, has a bunch of kids, and he's like a kid himself.
Yeah, the American life, yeah, man.
Yeah,
the you know, the fabric of America, you know, that was it. I mean, I just don't see these kids now being able to compete with these Russian soldiers. I mean, and all these other guys that are way tougher.
It's sad, like to think, like a guy like Putin, who's like a really screwed up, in a lot of ways, maniacal leader. He has that right, at least. Like he's not lost sight of like, you know, basic common sense.
Yeah.
I just saw a video which is like maddening, where they were saying, I think it was on the Federalist podcast. They were saying that there's only so many supercomputers in the world, and China has a few of them, and one of their supercomputers is aimed at TikTok, USA.
Right.
So if you notice when you scroll through TikTok that like they're hitting all your, like, is this like it was made for me? Yeah, these super algorithms. Right. Their supercomputers is teetering on, you know, artificial intelligence. It's really learning, and they purposely pointed that at us to subvert our culture. Meanwhile, a 14-year-old in China is only allowed to go on TikTok for 40 minutes. When he's on 40 minutes in a 24-hour period, all he sees is nationalism, science experiments, and educational material.
Right.
He's not seeing weird ladyboys telling you to use frog self pronouns.
Right.
He's seeing like people like march in unison. He's seeing principles from the founding fathers of science. He's seeing like a lot of valuable stuff that would be good for a young man. Wrestling, you know, combative stuff. And that whole thing, this whole interview I listened to, they said they tied it. Our whole educational system has been feminized in the United States, where like boys, anything masculine's been taken out, made bad. So boys there's less male doctors, there's less male educators. Men are literally falling behind because we've made our system feminine for women.
Right.
And meanwhile, all these other countries who are relatively based, although possibly evil, they're raising their boys up to be men.
Yeah, and you know what's funny, Steve? A second note on that is like I grew up in the 60s and the 70s, right? I used to watch like All in the Family. Classic. Archie Bunker, right?
Yep.
I used to watch all these programs, Chico and the Man, all these programs that they dealt with racism. They made fun of racism because they wanted to show how everybody was all the same, right?
Right.
And those same shows could not be made today because
Right.
everybody's so offended by everything. So there's
Yeah.
actually more, in my opinion, there's more racism now than there was back then. It's just
Absolutely.
more hate, man. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, and
You know?
I said this on a past podcast, but like when I was in college, even in the early 2000s, late 90s, we had people of all different races on the campus, and would randomly have parties. And the best time I ever had was everybody just bagging on each other.
Yeah, man.
You know, making fun of me, red hair, Irish,
Right.
any joke you
Right.
can think of that would
Right.
fit me.
Right.
Then the Puerto Rican guys, the black guys,
Right.
we would no hold barred just
Right.
rag on each other, and we
Right.
laughed our asses off.
Yeah.
But now
absolutely.
in this culture, I'm thinking, geez, if there was camera phones, I would be the only one in the room in trouble.
Right.
Everybody else would be cool, and they'd be like,
Right.
"Look at this now, cop. Look what he said." You know, like that.
I know.
But we were
man.
all having a good time. It couldn't have been more lighthearted and fun.
Right. Yeah, I think that what's happening in the U.S. when you mentioned about China, and I've heard comments about it on different podcasts that, I think even one of the Russian agents admitted that they injected all this into the country so that we would have inner havoc amongst
Right.
ourselves and all this stuff that's going on, all this turmoil that's going on. And it's, something's got to happen. It's got to happen quick.
Yeah, I know,
Something's
because
gotta happen.
turning a country is like stopping a battleship. You gotta.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yeah. It's going to take time. And we have those elections that are going to be in 2 years. And, I don't know what's going to happen, Steve. I really don't. I'm worried about that.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah, what can you do? It's like
Right.
I just hope that people, one of the best things I hear, the best feedback I get about the podcast. I mean, I love hearing that people love the podcast. Believe me,
Right.
It feels nice, but I love hearing from people who were like thinking of applying to be a cop, thinking about being a federal
Absolutely.
agent,
Right.
and when they write me an email and they say like, I did it because I heard Lorenzo Toledo talk, like stuff like that. That's the whole purpose. Like it,
Right.
to make a camaraderie, to let you see the inside, what it's really like. Because a lot of people are, I get a lot of people that are tentative and or kind of not afraid, but they're skeptical of what cops are like. But when they hear you guys come on here and that you're like just people.
Yeah, regular people. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
just regular people doing extraordinary things. It makes them feel like it's attainable and that they're going to be accepted.
Right.
Like these law enforcement agencies need all kinds of people,
Right.
all kinds of personality.
There's jobs for everyone. Absolutely. Like, and that's one thing I always try to say on any podcast or interviews I do is that I'm nothing special. I'm just like everybody else. I just chose to do undercover work in the beginning of my career, but I mean, it's nothing that I'm the super undercover guy. I'm not. I made a lot of mistakes. I did stupid things. I did things that could have got me killed, and I got lucky that I wasn't killed. It was just luck. It was just luck, and some quick thinking and luck. But I love being a cop, man. I got to do things. I got to see places. I got to go places, drive super expensive cars,
Yeah.
fly on jets. I did things that I would never able to do in my life.
Yeah.
Not from where I come from, So I loved it. If I could still be, I think I would still do it. I'm too old.
Yeah.
It won't take me anymore.
Yeah. It's a young man's game.
It's a young man's game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lorenzo, we're going on an hour here, man. I really appreciate you coming on, man. Great conversation. Great insight to
Thank you, Steve.
the undercover world and what special agents do. Thank you so much. And do you have social media you want people to follow you on, or are you?
No, you know what? I don't. But what I did want to mention to you is that I'm going on a new venture in January.
Okay.
I'm going to be working for this organization that's called Operation Underground Railroad. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but they go and find kids that have been sex trafficked.
Really?
Yeah,
Dude, that's incredible.
Yeah, man. I'm really looking forward to do this, because what they do is it's a nonprofit in the United States, right? It's an NGO, but what they do is they raise funds to help. They get tips all the time. They have 1-800 hotlines, and what they do is they work with whatever they have information about some kids that are getting kidnapped and put as slaves, for sex tourism or whatever. They get involved and they actually fund the police and help them, and they are actually there for the raids.
Wow.
So I'm going to be starting that in January.
Good for you, brother.
Yeah,
that's
man,
amazing.
I'm excited about that. Yeah.
You should be.
I'm excited about that. Yeah.
Damn, every cop I know would love to be involved in something like that.
Yeah. I love it, man, because you know what? Like we were saying earlier, Steve, we do this. I know it's hard to believe this, but we do this because we really want to help people.
Yeah.
That's really why we do this, and it is what it is. And then my other side gig is just being I'm a what do you call it? A licensed certified judge for MMA and boxing in the state of Florida.
Yeah, you mentioned that before. That's incredible, dude.
Yeah, I love doing that. That's my passion. That is my passion, is doing that as well.
Where are you at? How does that work? Are you amateur, or can you move up to are we going to see you on TV?
Yeah, I'm professional. I'm a professional judge in the state of Florida. I've done a bunch of shows that have come out on TV. I have yet to work the UFC, which is like the pinnacle.
Like Joe Rogan?
UFC, yeah. With those guys, I haven't done one yet because it doesn't come that much to Florida, and I'm fairly new at it. But I've done all the bare knuckle shows. I've done all the other MMA events that are here, that are junior leagues to the UFC, but they're still professional leagues. And I got to tell you, man, I love doing that. I love it. It's awesome.
That's sick. Were you a boxer or a grappler or anything?
I used to box. I grappled for a long time. I kept getting in and out of it because of injuries, and I had 4 kids, so it was hard. Excuses. Yeah. I should have stayed with it. I have 2 big regrets.
You had to go to work.
My first regret in life is not joining the Marine Corps. Okay. To this day, I regret not joining. My second is not staying with MMA. I wish I would have just stayed. I started right after the first UFC.
Oh wow!
In New York, so I would have had all this knowledge that I just all I've done for the last couple of years is go in, go out, go in, go out, and boxing I did as a kid. I was in the I fought in the amateurs in New Jersey.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
so that's why you had you had some confidence.
Yeah, I stopped when I fought a guy that was on the Olympic team.
Oh,
and
really?
I couldn't even see the guy. I couldn't even see him.
It's a blur.
He beat me up so bad that I said, I don't have this stuff for me. So.
Oh man, that's awesome! What a cool thing to do. I love it, man.
Thank you, Steve, man. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for having me on. And I hope I do get to influence some young listener out there that follow your gut. It's a great job, and just go ahead and do it, man. You won't regret it.
I love it, man. Thank you for coming on, Lorenzo. Can you hang for a second when I do the outro?
Sure, I can. Sure.
All right, I'll be right with you, brother.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great Lorenzo Toledo. What a fascinating conversation. Thank you to him for coming on once again. That was a ton of fun. Guys, it's that time of the show when we thank the Patreon sergeants. If you go to Patreon, if you go to the link in the show notes and you join the Patreon and you become sergeant level, you will get a shout out and my love on the show. Hey guys, that's an old plug. There it is, everybody. William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you. The great Tammy Walsh, Seth Wright, Scott Young, the great Sarah Pomeroy, Sasha McNabb, the great Tom Connell, the great Gary Steiner, Nick Noose, Nathan Gowan, Motor Cop Chronicles, the Iceman, check him out. The great Scott Minkler, Mike Wynn, Luke Shore, the handsome Lane Campbell, Lauren Stimson, James Rose, Jake Pinedo, Wayne M. Miller, Jason Lau, Greg Gadboy, George Tessier, Tony Fahey, Dylan Pyrozic, the great Chris June, Corey Payne, Sean Clifford, Dennis, because there's no last name, Brandon Hooker, Braden Walker, the great Ben Peters, everybody, Andy Biggs, there it goes again, John Shoemaker, Adam Mihal, Andrew Procker, and the great Alex Wazik. Thank you for keeping the lights on over here, guys. I really appreciate your continued support. You are the best. That's it for this week, guys, and I will see you next time.